I uncovered the sinister truth beyond humanity's last shelter. The surface holds forgotten horrors. The whispers of Maple Grove hid a darkness so profound, it clawed at Claire's chest. Late at night, after long shifts at the diner, she'd often hear the creak of branches tapping against her windows like fingers beckoning her to despair. But it wasn't the shadows that made her shudder tonight. No, it was the chilling message flashing on her phone, interrupting an otherwise peaceful evening at home: stay inside. They watch you. Panic surged through her, cold and numbing, as her breath quickened. She felt exposed, like the world outside had turned predator. The cryptic messages started simple enough, a few jabbing stabs at her sense of security. She was just a waitress, a barista, trying to raise her son Ethan in a picture-perfect suburb. Yet even in this shining facade of white picket fences, whispers slithered through the manicured lawns like smoke. Perhaps it was just a prank from bored teenagers, Claire thought. She shook off the unease, but as those messages kept coming, cryptic warnings that seemed to snare her heart and twist her solace turned brittle. "Mom, my friend says the shadows are dangerous," Ethan said one evening, bright eyes wide with fear. Claire's stomach twisted. "What friend?" She smiled, the tension in her chest not allowing it to reach her eyes. "We've talked about imaginary friends, sweetheart," she reassured while the chill crawled down her spine. The boy nodded but still seemed troubled. Later, as she huddled on the couch, she swore the leaves rustled outside, a faint whisper threading through the night air. Something was off in the neighborhood. Homes stood dark, their lights flickering like dying stars. Neighbors vanished without a word, the tailors who always waved, the elderly Mrs. Lindgren who kept cookies in her freezer. All gone. Claire's heart raced every time she took the trash out or peered into darkened windows. Maple Grove's safety felt like quicksand. The more she fought it, the deeper she sank. The local police brushed her concerns with the same flippant air as the leaf blowers that drifted their way through manicured lawns. Just having some fun, they laughed. Fun? This was about survival. Determined not to buckle, Claire invested herself in the dark, collecting threads of whispered information while her heart hammered with the fear of being preyed upon. She discovered the sordid history of the town, of families who trusted their neighbors, how a monster could wear a friendly smile while hiding its fangs. And then she uncovered gatherings in the woods under moonlight, figures merging with darkness, barely visible but undeniably grotesque. Back at home, Claire sank into despair, haunted by Ethan's crayon drawings left on the kitchen table, depicting shadowy figures surrounding a figure holding a bright red balloon. The hollow eyes and jagged teeth seeped into her thoughts. They spoke of dread, of danger. She tried to calm her frayed nerves. This was just childish imagination. Yet, as footsteps echoed from outside, her resolve crumbled. Late that night, after a dreary shift, she was met with an absolute dread. The front door creaked open, revealing Ethan's voice calling from the darkness. "Mom, my friend wants to meet you." Panic gripped her as the world around her warped and twisted. No. This wasn't supposed to happen. "Ethan, come back!" Claire shouted, but her voice trembled on the edge of despair. What horrible truth had she unwittingly unfolded? "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Claire stood frozen in place, a tense breath held in her chest, shadows began to coil tightly around her home, whispers drifting through the cracks and crevices. She unearthed something deep and terrifying, a truth that pulsed like a heartbeat in the silence. But was it already too late? Claire could feel the suffocating grip of danger creeping closer, her son's innocent pleas mingling with the sinister echoes of the night. All she could do was brace herself for whatever malevolence lay ahead, shadows gathering, tightening around her and Ethan, as something darker than she could have ever imagined seeped into the edges of their lives. Claire's heart hammered in her chest, fear leaping at her like a wild animal. "Ethan," she cried again, rushing to the door, each step heavy with dread. The faint glow of the porch light cast long shadows, dancing mockingly in the night. Her pulse thudded loudly in her ears as she glanced outside, the darkness swallowing everything whole. There, just at the edge of the light, she could see a small figure. Ethan stood frozen, his eyes wide and expression blank. "Mom, he's right here," he murmured, not stepping inside, but lingering in the doorway as if tethered by an unseen force. "Get inside, now," Claire commanded, terror etched in her voice. But Ethan remained transfixed, staring into the dark with a peculiar calm. A chill ran down Claire's spine, pushing her instincts into overdrive. She had to act. She rushed forward, grabbing Ethan by the shoulders, pulling him back into the safety of their home, but it wasn't just the shadows that pressed in against them. An eerie silence filled the air, stifling and thick. Claire slammed the door shut, locking it with trembling fingers. She turned to Ethan, who was still gazing out the window, his face a mask of confusion mixed with an unnatural sense of excitement. "What do you mean, he's right here?" she asked, forcing herself to breathe steadily, though every pulse of her heart screamed a warning. The boy blinked slowly, as if waking from a dream, his innocent gaze meeting hers with a peculiar brightness. "His name is Felix, he's my friend." There was a sweetness in his tone, something utterly wrong. Claire's breath caught, her mind racing. "Ethan, listen. You can't have friends like that." Ethan frowned, disappointment momentarily flooding his features. "But he's nice. He says he'll take me somewhere fun." The sound of a soft tapping interrupted them, gentle and rhythmic. It grew louder, echoing through their small home. Claire's stomach twisted as she rushed to the window, but all she could see were the trees swaying in the wind, awash in the moonlight. The leaves whispered harsh secrets she couldn't decipher. "Stop, Ethan!" she cried, as if she could somehow erase whatever thread held him to this friend. But the tiny boy continued on, mesmerized, drifting closer to the glass. "I have to see him, Mom. He's waiting," he murmured, his voice almost a song. A shudder raced through her. How could he resist? In that moment, Claire understood, whatever sinister presence lurked beyond their home, it had enchanted her son. "No!" Desperation gripped her as she yanked Ethan back, holding him tightly against her side. The tapping intensified, turning almost frantic. The walls vibrated with a pulse, as if responding to the growing malevolence outside. Around them, a strange darkness coiled, whispering through the air, tongues of shadow reaching for the cracks in their sanctuary. Claire's breath came in shallow bursts, her mind swirling with panic and fear. She had to protect Ethan somehow. What was Felix? Was he real, or merely a figment of a child's imagination formed by unseen forces? The very essence of Maple Grove twisted under her skin. As her thoughts spiraled, she recalled the stories of those who had gone missing, consumed by whispers and shadows. The clock ticked loudly in the silence, each second stretching into an eternity, and then she heard it, a gentle voice, clear and resonant, beckoning from beyond the door. "Let him come play." Instinctively, Claire clutched her son tighter, adrenaline flooding her veins. Fingers shook, eyes darting from shadow to shadow. Felix was no simple friend, he was a warning, an invocation of the darkness she had only started to grasp. "Mom, please," Ethan pleaded, the desperation in his voice fracturing her resolve. "I want to go." With a deep, rattling breath, Claire planted her feet firmly. There was no going back. She had to confront this evil. It was the only way to save Ethan and herself. Whatever challenge lay ahead, she could no longer hide. The door stood between them and the unknown, but Claire could feel it press against her, whispering promises too dark to imagine. "Stay away from him," she shouted into the night, her voice fierce. She braced for the retaliation, for whatever faux innocence may respond through the ever-thickening shadows. But the whispers only grew louder, echoing with laughter, a sound that chilled her to the bone. What awaited them outside? With an urgent decision burning in her gut, Claire knew she was about to step into the abyss. The question loomed, would they find their way back? Ethan's pleading tore through Claire like a knife, each syllable sending a fresh wave of dread crashing over her. This wasn't just a game to her son, it was a siren call that thrummed through the very air around them. She shook her head, desperate to dispel the spell woven over him. "Ethan, listen to me." Claire's voice cracked with urgency. She pulled him closer, her heart racing. "Felix isn't a friend. He's trying to trick you." She glanced fearfully at the window, half expecting to see a figure materializing in the gloom, but Ethan's wide-eyed gaze remained glued to a space just beyond the glass, as if something intangible was calling him. "He's not like the others, Mom." Ethan murmured, his voice descending into a dreamlike cadence, blissfully unaware of the tension taut in the room. Suddenly, the tapping turned to pounding. It was harsh, erratic, each blow a threat that echoed through the house. The windows rattled, and the door bulged slightly, as if something beyond was testing its strength. Claire braced herself, a protective instinct blooming fiercely within her. "Stay back!" She screamed, but Ethan stepped forward, drawn to the noise as if it were a magnet. Panic clawed at her stomach. "Don't you see? You can't trust him." His eyes glimmered with a strange light. "But he said he would show me something really cool." The air grew colder, wrapping around them like a vice. Claire staggered back, thoughts racing. She couldn't let Ethan fall into darkness, not like those who had come before them. The stories whispered in hushed tones by neighbors rang in her mind. Tales of children vanishing, voices luring them away. As if sensing her thoughts, the laughter outside morphed into the sound of 1,000 whispers, urgent and coaxing. "Come out and play, Claire." The walls trembled under the weight of those dark words, a chilling promise that gripped her heart with icy fingers. She needed to anchor herself. Claire glanced down at Ethan, seeing the innocent thrill on his face, and a surge of sorrow mixed with defiance ignited within her. "Ethan, if we open that door, we might never get back," she shouted, knowing the heaviness inside him was a battle she had to win. "You want to be safe, right?" "Safe?" Ethan echoed, confusion clouding his features. "But Felix says it's fun outside. Fun isn't worth your life." The desperation in Claire's voice carved every word into the air like stone. She took a step toward the door, bracing herself against the onslaught of shadows writhing in the corners. "Stop!" Ethan shouted suddenly, a flare of defiance sparking in his eyes, and it twisted her heart. She realized he was fighting the pull of whatever dark power had ensnared him. "Please, Ethan," she pleaded, voice trembling. She reached for him again, willing him to see that loving intent shone brighter than any beckoning shadow. "We can find something fun together. We don't need Felix." The pounding intensified, a furious barrage that seemed determined to break through. Claire's heart dropped as the door shifted ominously. At that moment, a piercing scream rang out, a sound so raw and rife with anguish that it jolted her from the clutches of thought. A neighbor, perhaps? Ethan flinched, eyes widening in fear, and Claire seized her chance. "We leave now." She swept him into her arms, racing for the back door. As she unlatched it, the wind screamed around them, a sudden rush of night air feeling alive against her skin. But before she could step outside, she turned her head, casting a final glance back. The darkness shifted, collating into a form right at the edge of the porch light. Felix stood there, a smile far too wide on his face, a ghastly reflection of youth that chilled Claire's blood. "Don't forget, Claire, I'll always be waiting." The shadowy figure melted back into the night as tendrils of darkness reached for her, snapping just beyond the threshold. Claire gasped, heart hammering, but there was no turning back now. She dashed into the openness beyond their home, clutching Ethan tightly, its warmth a singular comfort. The night seemed alive with unseen eyes watching, waiting. What had they unleashed? And with every step away from the house, a new chill gripped her, deeper and more insistent than the last. "Where are we going, Mom?" Ethan asked, looking up with innocence meant to pierce her brave facade. "Anywhere but here," she muttered, terror clawing at her throat. But was she running to safety or simply deeper into a nightmare? And as Claire sprinted into the dark, the shadows danced behind them, whispering her name like a haunting echo. Their path was just beginning. But would it lead them home or to something worse? The darkness closed in on Claire and Ethan like a suffocating blanket, wrapping them in a cold embrace. Claire ran, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm, each beat underscoring the dread that suffused the air. The whispering shadows behind them felt like a tide, relentless and hungry, chasing them into the unknown. "Mom, can't we just go back?" Ethan's voice trembled, the innocence in his eyes fading, replaced by fear. "No. We can't go back. Not ever." She forced the words out, the conviction in her tone sounding strangely hollow. Every instinct screamed at her to keep moving, but doubt clutched at her heart. What would they find out here? The street was eerily quiet, the normal sounds of night replaced by an oppressive silence that hummed with anticipation. The soft crunch of their hurried footsteps echoed against the stillness, every sound amplified in the midnight void. Then, somewhere down the road, a light flickered. It was dim, almost wavering, but it beckoned to her like a moth to a flame. "Look, Ethan." A light. Claire pointed, hoping it might signal safety, but inside, a knot of apprehension tightened. "We should head that way." As they approached, the light grew brighter, revealing a dilapidated house at the end of the street, its windows dark like vacant eyes. The flickering source appeared to be an old lantern swaying precariously on the porch. When they reached the gate, Claire paused to catch her breath. The wind seemed to sigh around her, carrying whispers, urging her to listen. "Ethan, stay close," she ordered, tightening her grip on him. Cautiously, she stepped onto the porch, its wood creaking ominously beneath her weight. The lantern swung again, casting dancing shadows that twisted into grotesque shapes. Claire hesitated, trying to quell the turmoil inside her. Was this a sanctuary or a trap? "Mom?" Ethan's small voice broke through her thoughts, but before she could respond, the door creaked open by itself, revealing a dark hallway beyond. "Hello? Anyone home?" she called, her voice shaky. No response came, but the silence was heavy, almost expectant. A sudden chill swept through, making her shiver. It was as if the house exhaled, a breath laden with age, sorrow, and something else, something darker. She stepped inside, pulling Ethan along. The air became thick, pressing against her chest like a weight. Inside, shadows clung to the walls, obscuring whatever might be lurking. Each corner seemed to hide secrets. Claire's pulse quickened as she noticed old photographs lining the walls, faded faces frozen in smiles, but their eyes seemed to follow her. "Mom, I don't like this place," Ethan whispered. "I know, but we need to find help. Come on." She led him deeper into the house. The floorboards groaned underfoot, reverberating with an unsettling familiarity. They passed through a living room filled with dusty furniture draped in white sheets, remnants of lives long abandoned. Suddenly, a loud thump echoed from the upper floor, slicing through the silence. Claire turned, fear shooting through her veins like ice. "Did you hear that?" Ethan nodded, eyes wide. "We should go," she urged, but something compelled her to hesitate. The thumping continued, rhythmic and insistent, almost as if something or someone was trying to break free. What if it's a person? With a mix of reluctance and dread, Claire made her way up the stairs, each step heavy with hesitation. The shadows loomed larger, ethereal forms playing tricks on her mind. She could feel Ethan trembling at her side, his small hand clutching hers tightly. When they reached the top, the thumping intensified, mingling with muffled sounds that sent a fresh wave of nausea through her stomach. It was desperation. A plea. But from whom? "Mom, please," Ethan said, his voice trembling. Before she could answer, the door at the end of the hallway suddenly swung open, revealing a room shrouded in darkness. As she peered in, a figure emerged from the shadows, its features obscured. "Help me," it rasped, a cry wrapped in despair that clawed at her very soul. Claire's instinct screamed at her to run. Time slowed, and the shadows whispered with unearthly glee, swirling around her. Was it Felix's voice? Had the darkness followed them here? Claire felt Ethan's grip loosen as he slipped slightly behind her, eyes wide with terror. She needed to act, to decide. Stay and face whatever horror lay within that room, or run and risk whatever waited in the night beyond. The figure stepped forward, its features twisting into a grotesque mockery of humanity, and Claire's blood chilled. She had to choose no backup plans, no destinations, just a moment of clarity amidst the chaos. What if this wasn't the end but merely the beginning of something worse? "Ethan," she breathed, holding her breath as fear washed over her, "we need to run." And just as she turned to flee, a cold hand gripped her wrist, anchoring her in place, leaving Claire hanging on the precipice of dread. "Don't run away, Claire," the voice echoed, a familiar resonance laced with taunting confidence. Was it the spirit of the lost? Or something far worse lurking in the depths of fallen darkness? A desperate decision loomed as the figure began to unfurl and the shadows danced closer. Claire's heart raced as the grip on her wrist tightened. An icy dread washed over her, a deep-rooted terror that clawed at her ribs. She felt trapped, frozen in a moment that stretched nearly to eternity. The figure before her was closer now, emerging from the darkness, and Claire's breath stuttered in her throat. "Claire," it said again, and this time, she recognized the voice, echoing like a nightmare in her head. It was Felix. She hadn't seen him since the incident, hadn't even dared to think of him. How was he here, in this forsaken place? "Ethan, stay back!" she shouted, her voice sharp and desperate. Claire tugged on her arm, trying to reassert some control, but the grip only tightened. A rough laugh escaped Felix's lips, a sound devoid of warmth, layered with malice. "Leaving so soon? I've waited so long to see you," he crooned, his ghastly features becoming clear, a rotted visage layered in shadow, eyes blacker than the abyss threatening to swallow them whole. "No. You can't be here," Claire gasped. The room felt like it might implode, the walls closing in as silent screams vibrated through her. She glanced at Ethan, who trembled, his wide eyes glimmering with tears. The boy took a hesitant step closer, instinctively drawn to the figure as if entranced. "Let him go," Claire shouted, her voice trembling between fear and fury. The spidery grip around her wrist faltered for just a moment, as if hesitation flickered in Felix's dead gaze. Claire seized that split second, jerking her arm sharply away. The moment of freedom was as fleeting as it was miraculous. "Mom!" Ethan cried, fear spilling over like a dam breaking. Without thinking, Claire grabbed his hand, pulling him backward towards the stairway, the echo of their footsteps racing through the house like a wild drumbeat, but Felix laughed, a sound that sank deep into her bones. "You can't escape what's already inside you, Claire. We're not done." They stumbled back down the stairs, the oppressive darkness swirling, seeking to consume them both. Claire felt a tug behind her as if the shadows themselves were trying to pull her back. Should she look? Should she confront the images dancing across her heart? "Keep running," she urged Ethan. They rushed through the living room, the shadows now morphing into grotesque forms. The furniture seemed to stretch and bend as if alive, reaching for them. Claire caught glimpses of faces in the dark, eyes glinting like sharp knives, hungry and pleading. It was as if the house itself was crying out with the remnants of those who had been trapped here before. "Mom! I don't want to die," Ethan wailed, his voice slicing through the thick air, electrifying her with panic. "You won. We'll find a way out." Claire vowed, desperate to believe her own words. At last, they burst through the front door and into the night, gasping in the cool air. But as Claire looked back, heart pounding, she didn't see the porch, nor the old lantern. It was as if the house had swallowed itself whole, an endless void in place of sanctuary and escape. "Where do we go, Mom?" Ethan asked, panting heavily, tears streaking down his face. "We'll find another safe place, I promise," Claire responded with a determination she didn't truly feel. But as they took one step away, a shadow coiled around her ankle, clinging tight. She looked down, terror bubbling in her throat. The dark appeared alive, thrumming with menace, and she understood that it wasn't just Felix they had to outrun. The very essence of this night was alive, feeding off their fear. With a surge of adrenaline, she pulled Ethan free from the shadow's grasp and forced them to move. They sprinted down the deserted street, the shadows shifting and merging, a dark tide chasing them. "Mom!" Ethan's voice trembled, the terror palpable. "What are we going to do?" But the answer was lost in her mind. A sick fear wrapped around Claire's heart. The lantern had drawn them in, revealing a malevolence twisting deeper than she had ever imagined. All houses held secrets, but this one promised a darkness that could swallow them whole. "Find somewhere safe," Claire shouted, pushing them to run faster. "We need light. We need—" But then, the shadows pooled ahead, blocking their path like a wall of darkness, the air thickening with whispered mockery. Claire halted, dread clawing at her insides. What if there's nowhere to go? Ethan's small voice trembled behind her, breathless with fear. The darkness before them stirred, silhouettes shifting, and Claire realized they weren't alone. A line of figures emerged, their faces hidden but their intentions wicked. "Come play with us," they whispered, 100 voices melding into an echo. She felt the panic rise, the crushing weight of despair enveloping her. "No. Not like this. Not with Ethan. Claire, run." But as she turned, the shadows surged forward, and in that moment, all hope seemed to slip away into the abyss, leaving only the chill of fear gripping her tightly. What were they hiding? What awaited them in the darkness? And deep within the shadows, a familiar voice called her name once more. "Claire, where are you going?" The question lingered in the night, as terror coiled tighter, drawing her closer to the heart of darkness. Claire's breath caught in her throat as the encroaching darkness thickened around her. The whispered voices crescendoed, filling the air with a haunting symphony of malice. The figures shifted, their forms indistinct but radiating an overwhelming sense of dread. They seemed to float, inching closer, eyes glinting like black stones polished by time and despair. "Run!" Claire shouted, urgency rippling through her, palms clammy and heart hammering in her chest. She spun around, grabbing Ethan's hand. But the shadows felt like chains now, heavy and unyielding, wrapping around them both. Ethan's little voice trembled. "What are they?" Before she could answer, one of the dark figures stepped forward, its face obscured by a shroud, a twisting smile carved into the void where features should be. "We are the Forgotten." It hissed, the words swirling in the night, echoing like an unholy chant. "You can't run from history, Claire." The air crackled like a live wire, sending shocks of fear down her spine. She could barely think amidst the chaos, her mind racing to grasp the weight of the ghostly figure's words. The Forgotten? How could they know her name? She tugged at Ethan, their feet pounding against the ground. With every frantic step, she felt the grip of the shadows loosening, but not for long. Something behind them surged, a thick tide pushing against their escape. "Mom, please." Ethan's voice was filled with desperation, a plea that reached deep into her soul. "I want to let them take you." Claire turned back, forcing herself to confront the entities swirling in the abyss. "Let him go." The figures recoiled slightly, but in a flash, they surged forward, a wave of darkness crashing against her will. One of them floated closer, its breath cool on her skin. "You cannot protect him from what is already inside you, Claire. It knows you." A chill seeped into Claire's bones. The house, the lantern, Felix. The nightmarish memories flooded back. A shadow born from her own despair? Did it latch on because she couldn't shake the past? Ethan, close your eyes. She shrieked, pushing him forward. The boy squeezed his eyes shut, but the darkness danced in the corners of his mind, weaving into shapes of fear. Claire could feel it crawling beneath her skin, tugging relentlessly at her spirit. Let us show you, the ghastly chorus sang, haunting the stillness of the night. All the pain that you've locked away, the fear that festers, no. Claire screamed, her heart pounding in defiance. She had to fight. She had to push through. As if sensing her determination, the shadows pulled back momentarily, and Claire saw a flicker of light ahead. A streetlight glowed, weak but persistent, a beacon amid the overwhelming darkness. Ethan, come on. She grabbed his hand and they darted toward the flicker, racing against the tide of fear threatening to drown them. But as they neared the light, a shadow lashed out, clawing at Claire's leg, pulling her back. She stumbled, nearly falling, but caught herself just in time. The grip around her thinned, yet the shadows were relentless, gnashing like teeth, waiting for her to falter. Mom! Ethan shouted, panic escalating. Just a little more. She urged, summoning every shred of strength she had. They burst into the light, breathless and wild-eyed. But as they stood panting beneath the soft glow, the whispers turned to howls, echoing around them. Claire realized too late that the light, that small sanctuary of hope, was weakening. The darkness lurked just beyond the reach of illumination, still hungry, still watching. Do you really think you've escaped? The chorus crept closer, shadows flickering almost eagerly. You can't run forever, we are part of you now. Claire's heart thumped heavily in her chest. The shadows pooled at the edges of the light, waiting, taunting her. There had to be something she could do, some way to fight back. But in that moment of silence, pregnant with tension, a figure emerged from the depths of darkness. It stepped into the fading light, revealing a face Claire knew all too well. Claire, Felix called, his mouth twisting into that same unnerving smile. It's time to finish what we started. The shadows surged forward, and Claire felt her resolve falter in the face of that familiar terror. Would she succumb to the very darkness that threatened to consume her? Or was there still a chance to break free from the nightmare entwining her fate with Felix's once more? As his voice echoed in the night, Claire steeled herself, feeling the weight of the shadows pulling her back into despair. The fight was far from over, but the end might reveal truths better left buried. The shadows pressed against Claire, a chill sinking into her skin. Felix's presence loomed, suffocating, like a thick fog endraped in malice. You've come so far, yet here you are, tangled in the past, he sneered, pacing toward her with a gliding motion that sent shivers racing down her spine. No! Claire screamed, pulling Ethan closer. His fragile body shook against her, eyes wide in fear. She felt the darkness pulse around them, squeezing tighter, demanding surrender. Felix stopped. You can't hide from memories, Claire. They are woven into your being. The shadows roared in agreement, echoing a chorus of despair that wrapped around her like chains. Every sound merged into one, a cacophony of the past crying out for recognition. Ethan whimpered, "Mom, stay with me." She pulled him toward the flickering streetlight, but the sphere of illumination felt fragile, trembling under the weight of the darkness pressing in. What do you want? Felix's smile widened, revealing teeth sharpened to cruel points. To remind you of your sins. The things you chose to forget. She wanted to scream, wanted to lash out. She had thought fleeing from her past would secure her and Ethan's safety. But his words lingered, they drifted through her, each syllable igniting faint memories, shadowy figures from her life fighting to claw their way back. The ground beneath them shifted, pulsing like a heartbeat. I'm done with the past. Claire screamed, but the moment her defiance left her lips, the shadows lunged. Long, clawed hands reached toward her, grazing her skin. A memory flickered, a face lost to time adorned with laughter that once filled their home, now replaced by guilt and shadows. Her mother's voice echoed, soft yet commanding, "You cannot escape the truth, Claire. Stop it." Claire collapsed to her knees, burying her head in Ethan's hair, the scent of his shampoo providing a brief, weak comfort against the storm of emotions. "This isn't real. This can't be real." Felix chuckled, a sinister sound that rattled her bones. "But it is. Fear. Regret. Betrayal, your demons feed off these." He extended a hand, black mist swirling around his fingers like smoke. "Join me, Claire. Remember, feel. Only then will you be free." "No!" Ethan shouted, pulling away slightly. "You're lying." The ghastly laughter fluttered like moths drawn to a flame. Shadows twisted into faces, features shifting. Claire could see her past rise among them, lost fragments of her life that she had buried deep. Friends, family, all were there, spectral images crying out with disappointment and sorrow. "This is your legacy," Felix declared triumphantly, his voice rising like a storm. "Embrace it or perish." Heart hammering, Claire fought the urge to submit. The light flickered with her pulse, a dying ember yearning to ignite. "Get away from us," she yelled, forcing herself up. "You don't control me." Light burst from her, a blinding flare igniting around them. The shadows hissed like snakes retreating from the fire. Claire seized Ethan's hand, forcing herself to harness the raw energy of her will, focused on a single thought: love, but Felix, undeterred, clapped his hands once, a loud resounding echo that split the air. "You think this flicker of light can save you? You are so much weaker than before." The light dimmed, weaving back into the depths of the encroaching shadows as despair attempted to swallow her whole again. Claire gasped, struggling against the overwhelming dark. "Mom, I'm scared." Ethan cried out, tears streaking his cheeks. "Then don't be afraid." Claire yelled back, her voice rising to meet the horror surging toward them. "Fight with me." As if empowered by his mother's words, Ethan squeezed her hand tighter, eyes blazing with defiance. Together, they formed a singular pulse, a heart, pushing back against the void. The lingering past quivered, a hesitant breath in the rattling void. But Claire knew this was merely the beginning. They were not out of danger yet. An unstable balance hung in the air, and with each moment, the shadows griffined further into chaos around them, with fear clawing at her heart and Felix's taunts echoing back through the maelstrom. Claire took a step forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead. "I'll break these chains," she vowed, eyes locked on Felix. "It's time to set the darkness free." Just then, a piercing crack sounded behind her. The very ground they stood upon trembled, and Claire felt the air grow charged with intense electricity, and then she saw it, a deep rift opening in the earth, dark and unfathomable, pulling shadows into its depths like a whirlpool. "What's happening?" Ethan shouted, gripping her hand. Claire could only watch in horror as the shadows screamed in rage and despair, their forms slipping away, dragged down into the rapidly widening chasm. The rift pulsed a heartbeat, a promise of horror yet to come. "Who will fall? Who will rise?" Felix whispered, his face now twisted in raw excitement. "You think you have control, but this is only the beginning." With that, the darkness erupted, and as it pulled Felix and the shadows into the abyss, Claire whispered the only thing on her mind: "What happens now?" The echo mocked her, a promise of new terror lurking just beyond the horizon. The rift throbbed as though alive, pulsating with an ancient hunger that echoed in Claire's bones. Ethan trembled beside her, eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears, the overwhelming fear etched across his face tightening her chest. The shadows, now in a desperate retreat, twisted and shrieked as they spiraled down into the abyss, leaving behind flickers of memories like dying embers. She felt it deep within, an urge to flee, to run from what she had awoken, but behind her lay the thickening darkness, full of the chilling presence of Felix. "You think you've seen the last of me?" His voice, deep and resonant, sent shivers crawling up her spine. "What are you?" Claire shouted, her own voice feeling small against the roar of the rift. "Your past, your pain, and your reckoning," he hissed, his form lingering just past the fringes of the light. "You cannot escape me, or the truth that binds you." Suddenly, the shadows that lingered around them reformed, merging into shapes of what seemed to be people those Claire had forgotten, faces shrouded in sorrow and regret. They reached out, fingers stretching toward her, a silent plea for release. "Mom! Don't let them take you!" Ethan cried, squeezing Claire's hand with desperate strength. His voice cut through her confusion, grounding her once more. "No! This isn't real!" She yelled, her heart racing faster, a fearsome rhythm echoed by the roiling chasm behind her. "I won't give in." But the shadows gathered, swirling around her, whispering secrets. "You abandoned us, Claire. You chose to forget." Their voices crooned, each layer of sound scraping at her sanity. "Stop." Claire felt the fear boil over. Fueled by a surge of rage against the past that sought to drag her down, she stepped toward the rift. "You can't take me." The rift stormed with power, dark energy swirling like a tempest. Faces of her past flickered, their expressions twisted into masks of sorrow and wrath. "You will pay for your choices." Ethan clung to her, his small body shaking against her side. "Please, Mom. We can't let them win." Their bond ignited a flicker of light, illuminating the edge of the abyss just enough to see the swirling remnants of grief captured there. Claire's heart thudded harder, despair clawing at her mind as she fought to hold on to the present. Then, in an instant, Felix lunged forward. His figure blurred into the darkness, intensifying his menacing presence. "Embrace them!" he roared, and Claire felt the weight of lost souls pressing harder, pulling her down toward the maw of despair. "No!" she howled, clenching her fists, desperation fueling her defiance. "I will not be consumed." For a brief moment, the light that sparked between her and Ethan blazed, pushing back against the dark. But Felix's laughter cut through, sharp as glass. "That light will burn out. You're no match for what you've unleashed." Suddenly, the ground quaked beneath them, sending Claire stumbling. The light flickered dangerously low, the shimmering hope dwindling as shadows clawed at her legs, dragging her toward the edge. Claire's mind raced. She couldn't think about defeat. They had to escape somehow. Just then, from the depths of the chasm, a shriek pierced the air, reverberating through her. It was more than just a sound, it was a rush of emotions, raw and chaotic. The faces from the past howled as they spiraled back into the darkness. They were not just lost, they were enraged, demanding a reckoning. "Ethan, we have to jump!" Claire yelled, locking her gaze on her son, trusting in the bond they shared. "Where, Mom?" he screamed, tears spilling over. "Into the light. It's the only way." But as they moved toward the edge, the shadows danced closer, tightening their grip, threatening to drag them into the encroaching void. "Do not listen to her." Felix's voice roared, his presence swelling again. "All hope is lost." The rift's edges shimmered ominously, pulling at her like a predatory force. It felt endless, like a yawning mouth waiting to swallow them whole. "Now, Ethan. Trust me." Claire shouted as she stepped forward, heart racing, but just as they prepared to leap into the blinding light, a piercing scream erupted unearthly, echoing the torment of the souls below. "Mom! Wait!" Ethan pulled her back, eyes wide with fear. In that moment, Claire hesitated, the shadows recoiling as they sensed her doubt. The rift trembled, and the light flickered perilously. "What will you choose now?" Felix taunted, voice dripping with mockery. "You can stay and join them or leap into the unknown." The shadows swirled toward them, threatening to drown them in darkness, their whispers full of dreadful promises. Mom. Ethan's voice wavered, the ground lurched violently beneath them, forcing Claire to decide. Could they face the horrors of their past, or would they risk the leap into uncertainty? With a deep breath, Claire took Ethan's hand, the flicker of resolve igniting once more. "We go together," she pledged, looking into her son's terrified yet trusting eyes. But as they prepared to make the impossible choice, a new sound rose above the chaos, a growl from somewhere deep within the rift, signaling that darkness was not done with them yet. What awaited them in the depths of the unknown? The ground shook violently beneath Claire and Ethan, the rift's growl echoing a promise of terror. It was a sound that froze the breath in her chest. What could possibly arise from that abyss, and would it snatch them away before they could leap? "Mom!" Ethan's grip on her hand tightened painfully. She could see the panic etched across his small face, and it tore at her heart. In that moment, a shadow twisted out of the rift, forming into a grotesque figure. It stretched upwards, limbs elongating like branches rotting in dark soil. Felix stood there, grinning amidst the chaos, a wicked satisfaction glittering in his eyes. "Such sweet delusions," he sneered, "what a lovely bond you share, but bonds can break, especially in darkness." The shadows swirled around Ethan and Claire, each whisper more insistent than the last. "You'll never escape, your guilt will consume you," they chorused, and Claire recognized voices from her past, the friends lost, the dreams shattered. Every secret she had buried under layers of time clawed back to the surface, desperate for acknowledgement, like ghosts needing closure. "No!" Claire shouted against the cacophony, forcing herself to focus on Ethan's shining eyes. "We can do this. Together." Right as she spoke, the light between them flickered in a pulse. The specters drew closer, drowning out her words, their faces twisted with the agony of abandonment. Just as they began to grasp at her, the ground beneath them lurched again. The shadows twisted in laughter, a gnarled chorus pushing against her resolve. Felix's presence loomed over them, taunting and hungry. "Why fight what is inevitable?" he roared, his voice booming like thunder. "You think by jumping you'll escape judgment? Wrong. Your past is right behind you, and the abyss is always hungry." In that moment, Claire had a flash, one clear, abiding image of her life, how she had tried to forget those she lost, how she had let herself slip away. The very idea of vaulting into the unknown was terrifying, but what lay behind them was worse. "What do you want, Felix?" she yelled, voice trembling with rage and defiance. His grin widened, teeth sharp like daggers glinting in the dim light. "The truth, Claire. The truth that you buried deep. Acknowledge it, and perhaps then I'll let you go," he crooned, as if dragging the words out into the air like a fisherman dragging a net through murky waters. Ethan suddenly released her hand, his small body moving toward the shadows that mirrored their lost loved ones. "No!" Claire cried out, feeling her heart lurch. "Ethan! Come back!" But he turned, propelled by the echoes of their family, their faces once full of love now twisted in despair, calling to him. "Mom! I can hear them." His voice trembled, caught between two worlds, longing and fear. Desperation slammed into Claire like a wave, drowning her in dread. There was no choice. She lunged for Ethan, desperate to pull him back to her. "Ethan, please." But the shadows shifted, reaching for him with desperate fingers, pulling him closer. "Jump, Claire." Felix's voice erupted in laughter, an ominous command echoing in the darkness. "Or let him join them." Claire felt her body shake. The light between them flickered, a dying ember struggling against insurmountable odds. With every scream from the rift, the spirit's sorrow seeped into her very being, threatening to pull her down into the dark, to claim every piece of her. "Trust me," she shouted one last time. "We will not lose each other." The ground erupted beneath them, the rift expanding wider, louder, the shadows now a living entity hungry for their hearts. Then, just as she thought she would be lost within the storm, she found the strength in her chest. "Ethan!" she cried, pulling him back. For a heartbeat, their strength was enough against the dark, but then a shrill scream, fiercer than before, cut through them, and Claire felt the abyss tug at her limbs, the choice twisting agony inside her. "Mom!" Ethan's eyes brimmed with terror as he reached out, her voice drowned in the swirling cacophony. Claire felt the darkness closing in, the weight of despair clawing at her mind. The rift growled even closer, the shadows hissed like vipers, their whispers a-tumbling over each other like a torrent. And just as she felt the last vestige of light slipping away, a realization hit her like ice water. The truth wasn't meant to bind her, it was meant to set them free. With one final push, she dove into the unknown, dragging Ethan with her, knowing it was the only path that might save them both. But as they fell into the dark, one chilling question echoed through her mind: what awaited them on the other side? As Claire and Ethan hurtled through the darkness, the swirling void enveloped them like a thick fog. Falling felt eternal, twisting through a surreal nightmare where time lost its grasp, and reality wavered like shadows in dim light. Claire's heart raced, a frantic drumbeat echoing through the silence, her entire being taut with fear and determination. "Hang on, Ethan!" she shouted, clinging to her son as they spiraled down, unsure when they would land or what awaited them below. Suddenly, a crash, an abrupt stop. They tumbled onto a hard surface, the impact jarring yet somehow grounding. Claire blinked against the dim illumination that flickered to life around them, revealing a vast cavern filled with shadows and shapes, pulsing like a living organism. Tendrils of darkness slithered around, whispering secrets and fears, while flickers of pale light glimmered sporadically, casting haunting, elongated shapes upon the stone walls. "Mom! Are we safe?" Ethan's voice quivered, fear mingling with piercing curiosity as he clung to her side. "No, sweetheart. We have to be careful," Claire murmured, her mind racing. This place was alive, imbued with memories and pain, a nexus of all they had fled. Claire's resolve ignited. This was it, this was the moment to confront not just Felix, but everything he represented. From the shadows, Felix materialized, his form sharper, more defined. He loomed over them, casting his long shadow across the cavern's floor. "Welcome to the depths, Claire. I see you've brought your little treasure. Will you abandon him, just like you abandoned everyone else?" His voice dripped with mockery, echoing around them like thunder. "Shut up!" Claire shouted, a fierce defiance rising within her. "You don't know anything." "Don't I?" Felix chuckled darkly, stepping forward. The shadows writhed, giggling, crying, tormenting. Figures emerged, ghostly faces of the lost, eyes hollow and mournful. "These are your memories, your choices. The players in your life you let fade away. You can't hide from the truth any longer." "No." Claire's voice was raw. "I want to let them talk to you." She squeezed Ethan's hand, feeling the heat of his small body next to hers. "We're a family, and I will fight for us." Felix's smile widened, transforming into something monstrous. "So brave but hollow. You think love can save you in the darkness? It's all weak." The shadows surged toward them, and Claire's heart raced. She needed something, anything, to change the course of this battle. "Ethan, listen," she whispered, eyes locked on her son's. "We have each other, and that will always be stronger than the shadows. Let us show them." "Okay, Mom," he replied, small yet fierce, as he raised his chin defiantly. Together they stood firm, grounding their energy in love and memory, pushing against the tide of darkness. A light ignited in the center of the cavern, a surge fueled by their connection. The glowing warmth radiated outward, pushing against the shadows, dispersing the gloom that clung so tightly. "No! No!" Felix screamed, fear twisting his features as the light spread. Hand in hand, Claire and Ethan stepped forward, focusing on every shadow that twisted hideously in fear. "We won't forget." They shouted together, their voices ringing clear, a thread of connection slicing through despair. "You don't own us. The cavern erupted in a maelstrom of sound, laughter intertwined with cries of pain as the shadows clawed back, unwilling to face the light. Felix shrieked, trapped in the glow, his form distorting as it fought against the palpable love radiating from them. "It's too late for you," Claire continued, her heart swelling with relentless determination. "You're a part of my past, but you will not define our future. I choose to move forward." With a final burst of courage, they propelled the warmth onward, breaking through the veil of darkness. The shadows shredded, evaporating into mist, and Felix's face twisted into a mask of rage. "I'll always find you," he bellowed before the glittering light swallowed him whole, a final scream echoing into nothingness as he was consumed by the brilliance. As the light enveloped them, almost like an embrace, Claire and Ethan felt themselves lift off the ground, suspended in a cocoon of warmth. Memories began to flow, not as burdens but as reminders of love, connection, and the strength they drew from their shared heart. And then, just like that, they were gone from the cavern, released into the night sky, landing softly on a grassy knoll back home in Maple Grove. Stars twinkled above, casting silver light across their faces, their sanctuary alive with hope and renewal. "Mom! We did it!" Ethan exclaimed, jumping up and down as if unburdened by fear. "Yes, we did." Claire smiled, enveloping him in a warm embrace, their silhouettes framed under the starlit sky. A weight lifted from her heart, and she finally felt free from the chains of her past. A sense of peace washed over them, a gentle reminder that they would move forward together, stronger and unbroken. Claire looked at the neighborhood, now glowing, untouched by the darkness they had faced. The black clouds of despair parted like whispers into the wind. "Together, there's nothing we can't overcome," she promised, looking deep into Ethan's trusting eyes. The terrible truth was now a memory, fading into the brilliance of hope, replaced by an understanding that their past shaped them, but it would never define them again. They turned away from the shadows of Maple Grove, stepping toward a brighter future where love would always light the way. Now that the story has come to a powerful close, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this shockingly intense ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Show your support for the channel. Only true fans understand the importance of these actions.